Denis Villeneuve, the best director of the decade. Denis Villeneuve was born on October 3, 1967, in the village of Gentilly in Bécancour, Quebec, to Nicole Demers, a homemaker, and Jean Villeneuve, a notary. Denis is the eldest of 4 siblings. His younger brother Martin Villeneuve is a screenwriter, director, actor, producer, artistic director, and he was the voice of Ted in 2013. Denis often felt uncomfortable as a child because in his country, hockey is everything, but he was terrible at it.
In Canada in the 70s, your position in society was defined by how good a hockey player you were. And I was one of the worst of all time. I was at the very bottom of the ecosystem.
His mind was always wandering on the ice. He did not want to become an athlete, but unlike most of his fellow citizens, he was interested in art. Even though he lived in a very small town, he had big dreams in his mind since childhood. Denis always loved storytelling and read science fiction books. And the dream of filmmaking started growing for him from those days to the point where he said, "After reading the book, Dune, at the age of 13, I prepared its storyboard, and I was sure that one day I would make a movie of it." He made his final decision to make films at the age of 14. He has watched the movies 2001, A Space Odyssey 1968, and Star Wars 1977 many times. By high school, he was known among friends as Spielberg for his interest in writing and storyboarding. Villeneuve considered a career in science, but he could not resist the urge to tell stories. Therefore, instead of continuing his studies in science, he studied cinema at the Université du Québec en Montréal. He was sure that he was born to make films, and therefore, he was not afraid to take risks and do difficult things. Like many Hollywood directors before him, Quebec's Denis Villeneuve started out in the independent film world. Villeneuve began his career making short films and won Radio-Canada's youth film competition, La Course Européenne, in 1991. What makes Denis Villeneuve stand out as a director is his opposition to presenting stories in the way our brains have been trained to process them. He is a movie maker who expands the thinking of his viewers by surprising them, to the point that they have to look up YouTube videos to explain what they just watched. The purpose is not to confuse, it's to leave you thinking of the psychological and social meaning behind the films, and what they reflect about reality. His talent became more visible when he made his first feature film, August 32nd on Earth, in 1998. Of course, he was not always lucky, and sometimes his films did not get success. But he would return to Montreal in such times to prepare himself to start again and try harder. Denis Villeneuve says, "Montreal for me, as a filmmaker, it's very important to stay in contact with that vibration. Every time I go back to Montreal, it's like creative fuel for me." Success in Quebec had helped him establish his cinematic identity, but Villeneuve had bigger stories to tell. So, he went to America to create his dreams. However, he has always tried to do things in his own style and not use Hollywood stereotypes to create a superhero. After Scorsese, he also slammed the Marvel films. If we're talking about Marvel, the thing is, all these films are made from the same mold. Some filmmakers can add a little color to it, but they're all cast in the same factory. It doesn't take anything away from the movies, but they are formatted. "I knew that by coming here I will have the tools and resources to make some of my dreams," he said. He always prepares several different storyboards to create the most influential and important scenes of his movies so that he can create the best work that has an impact on the audience. The more films he made, the deeper he dived into the science fiction world. He is made to work in this genre. He never uses music in the first cut of his films, ensuring that there is as much tension as possible before adding the score. His favorite film is 2001, A Space Odyssey. Incendies, released in 2010, brought Denis Villeneuve critical acclaim and international recognition. The film was nominated for the Best Foreign Language Film at the Academy Awards and opened doors for Villeneuve's future projects. For the movie Arrival, Villeneuve and screenwriter Heiserer created a fully functioning alien language. Arrival's logogram Bible contained a total of 100 different operative words, 71 of which were used in the film. Villeneuve wanted Arrival to make the viewer feel as if it were happening on a bad Tuesday morning, exactly what he felt when he was a child, sitting on a school bus on a rainy day, staring out the window and daydreaming. Arrival is a different movie about aliens that introduced Denis Villeneuve to the world. As soon as he finished working on Arrival, he immediately started focusing on Blade Runner 2049. The director insisted on one thing when casting for Blade Runner. He wanted Ryan Gosling to play the lead, because the character was written specifically for him. His 2009 film Polytechnique was shot in black and white to avoid the presence of blood on screen. Before releasing Polytechnique to the public, he had the victims' families watch it and ask for their blessing. Villeneuve is married to journalist-turned-film producer Tanya Lapointe. Tanya was working on Arrival as a production assistant. His personal hero is Steven Spielberg because he admires the worlds he creates and his compelling storytelling. Spielberg is also interested in Denis Villeneuve's films to the extent that he told him, "You have made one of the most brilliant science fiction films I have ever seen," and said that Dune, Part 2, is truly a visual epic and it's also filled with deeply drawn characters.
You have made one of the most brilliant science fiction films I have ever seen.
Steven, thank you.
Denis Villeneuve has expressed his desire to direct a James Bond film, describing himself as one of the biggest Bond fans. He thinks that the action genre is cinema itself, because when a spectacular film is well made, it can be very poetic. According to Villeneuve, God is nature, and he always tries to show nature in his works, beautiful, wonderful, and magical. When Villeneuve depicts violence in his films, it is only to express the effects of power. Denis believes that women are not shown as powerful as they should be in cinema, whereas in his family, both his grandmothers were strong and wise. So, he likes to show women as capable, intelligent, and powerful in his movies. Denis Villeneuve says that Hollywood today is all about Wall Street and limited creativity, while it is freedom and the ability to take risks that will save cinema. He does not have an account in any social network such as Instagram or others. Villeneuve praised Christopher Nolan and said that Tenet is a masterpiece that I was amazed to watch. Nolan is the best and most important director of our time. Meanwhile, Denis Villeneuve has been called the great director of the decade after making valuable films such as Sicario, Prisoners, Incendies, Blade Runner, Arrival, and Dune.